Waverly, when did it click that his obsession wasn't going to stay between the two of you? What was the exact moment you realized he'd come for your family, not just you, and that you had to start thinking in terms of protection, not romance?
He said it plainly. If I ever left, he'd end my family. I tried to treat it like a threat men say to control women. Ugly words, not a real plan. Then he proved he meant it. 3 months after I ran, a strange car rolled into my dad's driveway in Thornwillow Springs, and my body recognized danger before my eyes could place it. Thatcher Ravelin stepped out unwashed and hollow, walking toward our porch like my no didn't exist. Gravel crunching, Bronte barking, my brothers moving fast, my mother pulling the kids upstairs. I'd believed distance and paperwork meant safety. Instead, it became a stage where he demonstrated reach. In that second, I understood escaping him wasn't only about me, it was about shielding everyone I loved from the obsession he called love.
Before the danger was obvious, how did he first get access to you emotionally? What did he do in those early weeks that felt like care, so convincing you edited your instincts to fit the story you wanted?
He arrived like relief, and that was the trap. I met Thatcher when I was 23, and he remembered my coffee order after one morning. He opened doors without making a show of it. He sent goodnight texts that felt steady, attentive, protective. My friends called him charming. My mom liked how respectful he sounded. I wanted a clean love story, so I trimmed away the parts of myself that felt uncertain. The first red flags were small enough to excuse how he listened too hard, like he was collecting data, how compliments came with little tests, how he went quiet when another man spoke to me. I told myself it was intensity, not insecurity. When he looked at me, I felt chosen, and that feeling became a drug. I started dressing the way he liked and called it compromise. I didn't understand I was being hooked by attention that would later become surveillance.
When did the mask first crack in a way you couldn't explain away? Walk me through the first incident that made the room feel colder afterward, where your body reacted before your mind could rationalize it.
6 months in, we were out with friends. When a guy asked me where the restroom was, I pointed and kept talking. Thatcher didn't react in public, which made me think he was mature. At home, he threw his keys across the room and accused me of flirting. I tried to explain, but he wasn't listening. He was trying to win. The argument stretched until my voice got smaller and his certainty got louder. Then he punched a hole in my wall. Dust drifted down like snow. I stared at the damage, waiting for him to realize what he'd done, to look shocked, to stop. Instead, he collapsed afterward, crying, swearing he was sorry. He blamed his past, promised he'd never be that man, and I mistook remorse for change. That was the first time I felt fear and still stayed. I told myself it was a one-time rupture. What it really was a preview.
Control rarely starts as a command. How did it become daily life without you noticing, step by step, question by question, until your world was already mapped?
It started with, "Just let me see." He'd glance at my phone when it lit up, then ask who I was texting with a smile that felt sharp. Soon he wanted my passcode. When I hesitated, he said I was hiding something, and we fought for hours. I gave in just to end the fight. After that came the tracking app, for safety, he said, like ownership could be romantic. If I questioned it, he called me ungrateful. If I agreed, he praised me for trusting him. The praise felt like oxygen, so I learned to chase it. I started deleting harmless messages to avoid questions. I rehearsed explanations, softened my tone, measured every interaction by whether it would trigger him. I stopped sharing opinions to keep the air calm. By the time I noticed, my life was already organized around his moods. It wasn't partnership, it was management. Sin.
What did it cost you over time? Friendships, family, the version of you who used to take up space without asking permission? Where did you feel your world begin to shrink?
I canceled plans because it was easier than dealing with his moods. Karis Whitburn pulled me aside once and asked if I was okay. I laughed and called it a honeymoon phase. Thatcher hated her. He said she was jealous and trying to break us up. Whenever I planned to see Karis, he'd start a fight beforehand, then sulk for days. So I stopped making plans. Then I stopped answering calls. My sister, Leora Pennick, called less because Thatcher was always nearby, listening. I stopped my book club, stopped girls' nights, stopped visiting Thornwillow Springs. I stopped posting photos because he questioned every comment. Even my laughter felt suspicious to him, like joy was evidence against me. My world shrank until it was mostly him, and I told myself that was love. It wasn't. It was captivity dressed as devotion, and I helped decorate the cage because I was trying to survive.
When did it turn physical? And when people ask, why didn't you leave right then? What's the real answer? Emotionally and practically, without shame, without simplifying it.
The first time he hit me was our 1 year anniversary. A nice restaurant, friendly waiter, and Thatcher went quiet like weather changing. Back at his place, he asked why I was trying to embarrass him. I said I wasn't, and he slapped me. My vision sparked. The shock was worse than the pain, how fast love turned into violence. Then he cried, apologized, promised it would never happen again. I wanted to believe the version of him who held me after, the one who spoke softly, the one who sounded like regret. I covered bruises with makeup, wore long sleeves in summer, lied smoothly about clumsy accidents. I kept my head down at work so no one would look too closely. Leaving felt impossible because he trained me to fear what would happen if I tried, and because he'd already made me responsible for his feelings, his stability, his narrative. I wasn't choosing to stay. I was calculating danger and trying to minimize it.
How did he manage access, keep you away from the people who could protect you without ever having to physically block the door? What did that manipulation look like in everyday moments?
My dad, Cormac Ellery, is a former Marine, and my brothers, Bramwell and Hollis, don't ignore danger. Thatcher knew that, so he made visits home feel like betrayal. Before I was supposed to drive to Thornwillow Springs, he'd picket me until I felt guilty for going. If I went anyway, he punished me later with silence or cruelty. Eventually, I stopped trying. I told my family I was busy, working late, not feeling well. My mom's worry turned into tears, asking what she'd done wrong. I couldn't tell her the truth because Thatcher convinced me he'd know, somehow, if I did. He'd say he could always tell when I talked about him, like he had a sixth sense for disobedience. Fear made him feel everywhere, even when he wasn't in the room. I started behaving like he was always watching because the consequences taught me to.
The engagement. What did that ring actually represent to you in private? Not the photo version, the real version. What changed the moment you said yes?
The ring felt like a lock. 2 years in, Thatcher proposed, and I said yes because I was afraid to say no. By then, he'd chipped at my confidence, my body, my hair, my clothes, until I heard his voice inside my own thoughts. He told me no one else would want me, that I was lucky he put up with me. Publicly, he played devoted fiancé, posting photos and talking about forever. Privately, he tightened rules and raised stakes, like the engagement proved ownership. I planned my days around preventing his anger. I told myself I was the problem. If I was more careful, more loving, more quiet, it would get better. I didn't understand the goal was never peace. Peace would have meant I could breathe, and breathing would have meant I might leave. The ring didn't make me feel chosen. It made me feel claimed, and I smiled anyway because I was trying to avoid punishment.
Who was the first person you told, really told, and what made that moment different from every time you tried to hide it? What shifted in the room between you?
Karis. One afternoon, she showed up at my apartment while Thatcher was at work. She didn't call first because she knew I'd make an excuse. When I opened the door, she took one look at me, sunglasses, indoors, split lip, and started crying. I'd rehearsed a lie about falling, but she didn't ask for it. She came inside and waited like she was giving me permission to stop performing. Something in me cracked. For the first time in 2 years, I said it out loud. He hits me, he tracks me. I'm scared. Saying it made it real in a way my private thoughts never did. Karis held me while I sobbed and told me it wasn't my fault. She wanted me to leave right then, but my body froze because Thatcher had started making threats, and they weren't only about me anymore. I could imagine him punishing my family for my escape, and that fear acted like a chain.
What were the threats that kept you trapped even after you saw him clearly? How did he say them, and what did they do to your ability to imagine a future without him?
He threatened my family. He'd say, almost casually, that he'd find me wherever I went. Then he'd add that he'd hurt the people I loved if I ever left. He proved it wasn't a bluff by naming my parents' street, my brother's workplaces, my niece's school. He wanted me to picture it so vividly I'd stop imagining escape. The worst part was his calm, eyes flat, voice steady, like reading a grocery list. That steadiness told me he'd already rehearsed it. Karis gave me a spare key and told me I could come anytime. I promised I'd make a plan, but it took 3 months to work up courage because every step toward freedom felt like dragging my family closer to his rage. I started living in a narrow corridor. Do what he wants. Keep them safe. He made my love for my family into a weapon.
How did you build an exit plan while he monitored your life? What did planning look like in real actions? Small, boring, precise, when you couldn't afford to be dramatic.
I moved slowly, like I was smuggling myself out. Important documents first, then sentimental pieces, photos, a keepsake from my grandmother. I'd pack a small bag, take it to work, leave it in my car, then drop it at Karis's on lunch. Thatcher never noticed because he believed I was trapped. I opened a new bank account he didn't know about and redirected a small part of my paycheck there. I researched safety plans on my work computer because he monitored everything at home. I learned leaving is often the most dangerous time, which didn't calm me. It made me precise. I watched for windows, when he'd be out, how long he'd be gone, what I could carry. I practiced acting normal because normal was camouflage. Planning became the only way I could breathe. Every tiny step said quietly, there is a version of me that gets out.
Your boss, Violetta, what did she notice? And what did she say that changed your approach from someday to soon, from hoping to executing?
Violetta Sloan noticed I'd become a quieter version of myself, withdrawn, jumpy, tired. She pulled me aside and asked if I was okay, and I broke. I told her the truth, expecting judgment. She believed me immediately. She said she'd escaped an abusive relationship and understood the fear and shame. Then she told me what I needed to hear without sugarcoating it. Leaving is often the most dangerous moment. When control is threatened, violence escalates. She made me promise to be careful and gave me her personal number any hour. That warning didn't paralyze me, it sharpened my plan. I stopped daydreaming about someday and started preparing for soon, like my life depended on timing. It did. She didn't rescue me in one dramatic gesture. She gave me clarity, resources, and a witness. And that made me feel less alone inside my own fear.
Take me to the night you finally said, now? What happened exactly, minute by minute? What did he do? What did he say? And what flipped inside you that made you call Karis?
Tuesday night. I could read his mood by his jaw. He accused me of being on my phone, though it was face down. He grabbed it and scrolled through my messages. Hunting. He found texts with Karis and fixated on one line. You deserve better. He demanded, better than what? Better than who? I denied it, but he could always tell when I was scared, and that made him more certain. He grabbed my throat and slammed me against the wall. The pressure made my ears ring. My thoughts narrowed to air. Then he said it calmly. If I ever tried to leave, he'd kill my whole family, starting with my dad, and make me watch. He described it like a plan. When he walked out, I slid to the floor, shaking. I called Karis and whispered, I'm ready. Saying it felt like stepping off a ledge and trusting there'd be hands below.
In the minutes after that call, what did you do and what almost stopped you? I want the physical reality, shaking hands, choices, the smallest details that made it either possible or impossible.
Karis told me to pack what I could carry and go while he was gone. My hands shook so badly I could barely zip a bag. Clothes, laptop, toothbrush, the few things that mattered. I kept thinking, move like you belong here, like you aren't escaping. I was halfway to the door when I heard his car pull up. My heart stalled. I ran to the bathroom, locked the door, and texted Karis to call police. Thatcher came inside, calling my name in a sing-song voice, almost playful, and that scared me more than yelling. When he found my bag, he exploded, pounding the door. He screamed that I was ungrateful, that he'd bought me things, like gifts meant ownership. I pressed my ear to the door, counting seconds, trying to breathe quietly so he wouldn't hear fear. I remember the tile cold under my legs and the taste of metal in my mouth. Courage didn't feel like strength. It felt like not moving backward.
When police arrived, how did he try to rewrite reality in real time? And what did you show them? What made the truth visible when he tried to make you seem unstable?
He switched masks instantly. I heard him tell officers it was a misunderstanding, that his fiancée was having a mental health crisis and he was trying to help. Calm, practiced, like he'd rehearsed it. But neighbors had called before, and officers recognized the pattern. When they told me to come out, my legs were numb. I showed bruises on my neck. They photographed everything and took my statement while Thatcher argued and refused to calm down. They arrested him. The sound of the cuffs was surreal, like proof my life was actually happening. I stayed at Karis's that night, under blankets, shaking so hard my teeth hurt. Relief didn't arrive as peace. It arrived as exhaustion and dread, because I knew arrest wasn't an ending. It was a trigger. He'd lost control for a moment, and I understood he would try to get it back. Even safe rooms felt temporary. My body didn't trust quiet yet. It just waited for the next move.
After he made bail, what did stalking look like day to day? Not the movie version. What were the small, relentless behaviors that turned normal life into constant calculation?
He posted bail the next morning and started calling. Voicemails swung from crying apologies to sharp threats. I blocked him. New numbers appeared, then emails, then fake accounts. I got a restraining order. It felt thin, like paper against a storm. Thatcher showed up outside my work, standing across the street, just far enough to follow rules. He didn't speak. He stared until I got into my car. Being watched turns ordinary moments into danger math. Where are the exits? Who sees me? How fast can I move? I jumped at footsteps and flinched when doors closed. Violetta had co-workers walk me out at night. I couldn't sleep or eat. I dropped weight fast. People underestimate how loud silent watching can be. It changes the way you hold your keys, the way you scan reflections, the way you breathe. Karis finally said what I couldn't stop thinking. I couldn't live like this. I needed to go home, where people who love me could hold the line with me.
Telling your father the truth, what was that call like? What did you say first, and what did you hear on the other end that changed your sense of being alone in this?
I called my dad, Cormac Ellery, late at night and tried to keep my voice steady. It cracked anyway. I told him everything: years of control, bruises, strangling, threats against our family, the way Thatcher waited outside my job. There was a long silence, and I braced for anger at him, at me, at the world. Instead, he said, "Come home, baby girl. We'll keep you safe." His voice broke on the last word, and it hit me hard. My father doesn't cry. Karis drove with me the next day to Thornwillow Springs like she didn't trust the highway. My mom held me so tight I couldn't breathe. Bramwell and Hollis looked like they were trying not to explode. I made them promise not to go after Thatcher. I needed protection, not revenge. That was a hard distinction for them, but they tried. The car ride felt like crossing a border. I wasn't just leaving him, I was returning to a life he'd tried to erase.
Once you were home, when did you realize he'd already found you anyway? What was the first sign that starting over didn't mean he stopped hunting?
The first week felt quiet enough that my body started to unclench. Then Thatcher texted my new number. He described our house in details no stranger should know: mailbox, driveway crack, wind chimes. He sent photos: my dad's truck, my mom in the yard. My blood went cold. He was watching. Cormac called police, but they said unless Thatcher showed up in person, there wasn't much to do. My dad didn't accept that. He sat us down and spoke like a man planning for weather. We'd prepare as if the threat was real, because it was. Cameras, motion lights, locks changed, doors sealed. No one went anywhere alone. Bramwell checked windows like it was his job. Hollis memorized license plates. Then my father brought home Bronte. Every bark became an alarm, and every quiet moment felt borrowed. I hated that my presence had turned the family home into a security project, but I also watched them choose me anyway. Love didn't feel like speeches. It felt like people staying alert beside you.
What protections did your family put in place, and how did it change daily life inside the house? I'm interested in the contrast, increased safety on paper, but what your nervous system did anyway.
The house became safer, but my nervous system didn't trust it. Every car passing made my heart race. Sleep came in scraps. Nightmares filled the gaps, doors breaking, my family hurt because of me. I stopped taking care of myself, skipped showers, wore the same clothes, forgot to eat. My mom insisted I see a doctor. I started medication for anxiety and depression. Soon after, I began therapy with Dr. Celine Marwood. She explained trauma and hypervigilance like an injury, not a personal failure. That language mattered. It took shame out of my symptoms. Karis called daily. Leora came up from Florida with Isolde and Clementine and held me while I cried. Love didn't erase fear, but it kept me from disappearing inside it. We were building safety in layers: hardware, routine, witnesses, and finally, language. I learned that healing isn't just feeling better. It's having enough support that you can survive feeling worse without making it your identity.
Take me to the day he showed up at your father's house. What unfolded first? Where were people positioned? What did you see? And how fast did your home turn into a crisis scene?
Saturday in May. Cormac and my brothers were outside on the deck. My mom and I were inside. The kids were in the living room, Leora upstairs. I heard gravel and saw a rental car roll in. Thatcher stepped out looking feral, unkempt, sleepless, eyes too bright. He walked toward the porch like he owned the place. I screamed, and my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. My mom herded everyone upstairs and called 911. Bronte exploded at the door, a deep bark that shook the frame. Cormac, Bramwell, and Hollis grabbed their guns, not to hunt him, but to make the boundary visible. My dad opened the door and stepped onto the porch with my brothers beside him. Thatcher tried to peer past them into the house, saying he needed to see me, like my fear was negotiable. He spoke as if we were all overreacting, and he was the reasonable one. That mismatch, his calm performance against our panic, made me understand how dangerous he could be. He wasn't there to talk. He was there to reclaim.
What did your father and brothers do in that doorway that prevented chaos? I want the decisions they made, especially restraint, when adrenaline would have tempted them to rush him.
They didn't rush him, and that restraint saved us. Cormac stepped onto the porch with Bramwell and Hollis beside him, weapons visible, steady, like boundaries made physical. Thatcher laughed, then snarled that they'd poisoned me against him. Hollis said we'd seen bruises and heard threats. Thatcher's hand slid toward his jacket, and every muscle in my body locked. 3 barrels lifted at once. My dad warned him softly not to try it. Thatcher withdrew his hand, holding only his phone, like he'd been testing reactions. Sirens grew louder, and time felt thick, slow, dangerous. My brothers held the line without escalating, no shouting, no hero fantasies, just control. It was the first time I'd watched men I loved protect me without making me responsible for their rage. They weren't trying to win an argument. They were buying seconds until police arrived. They kept distance, kept their voices low, kept their eyes on his hands. That sounds simple, but it's discipline. In that moment, I learned protection can be quiet.
When police searched the rental, what did they find? And what did it do to you to hear those items named out loud as evidence instead of fear?
Officers took control fast, and Thatcher switched masks, hands up, obedient, auditioning for mercy. They arrested him for violating the restraining order, then searched the rental. What they pulled out made my throat close. A large hunting knife, zip ties, duct tape, rope, a tarp, garbage bags. Hearing those items listed felt like staring at an ending I'd narrowly avoided. My mom covered her mouth. Bramwell went still. Hollis kept his eyes on Thatcher, like he expected another trick. I gave my statement and handed over messages and photos. For the first time, it wasn't just my terror talking, it was evidence. An officer said quietly, "This is premeditation," and wrote it down like a fact, not a feeling. Something in me shifted. My shame evaporated because shame depends on doubt, and doubt collapses when a trunk full of tools tells the story clearly. I wasn't dramatic, I was accurate. The truth finally had a file number.
What happened legally after that day, and how did it reshape your sense of safety? Not fixed, not magically healed, but different in a way you could feel.
The case stopped being messy relationship drama and became a file of facts. The prosecutor added stalking, criminal threatening, and assault from the strangling. Based on what was in the car, they pursued attempted kidnapping. Thatcher's lawyer pushed for probation and counseling, like violence was a misunderstanding with paperwork. The state refused and set it for trial. Bail jumped high enough he couldn't buy his way out this time. My dad and brothers gave statements. I handed over voicemails, photos, and messages. Knowing he was in county jail didn't erase fear, but it changed its shape. Fear stopped being a constant sprint and became a guarded walk. I could sleep a few hours without checking locks every 10 minutes. I could sit at the kitchen table and taste food again. Safety still felt fragile, like glass you carry carefully, but for the first time it felt like something that could exist without me bargaining for it. I didn't have to appease him to survive. The system, imperfect as it is, had recognized the pattern.
While he waited in jail, what did rebuilding look like in the most ordinary sense? Your days, your body, your habits. What were the small steps that added up?
Small, stubborn steps. Violetta held my job and let me work remotely so I could stay in Thornwillow Springs without losing income. I increased therapy to twice a week and took medication even when I hated needing it. Karis came on weekends with groceries and bad magazines, making me laugh without demanding explanations. My family treated me like someone returning from war. Meals on schedule, rides to appointments, someone nearby without hovering. I started showering regularly again. I walked Bronte at dawn just to prove I could be outside. Some days I felt brave, other days I couldn't leave my room. But the days stacked, and the stack became momentum. I kept a notebook by my bed and wrote one true thing each night so the past wouldn't rewrite my present. Sometimes the true thing was as small as I ate today. I slept for 3 hours. I said no, and nothing bad happened. Those were victories. They were also practice, training my nervous system to accept calm as real.
What were the quiet family moments that made you feel human again? The ones that didn't look dramatic but somehow stitched you back together? Where did you first notice your hands stop shaking?
Cooking with my mom was the first place my hands stopped trembling. Real meals, not microwaved fear food. Measuring flour, chopping onions, tasting sauce. Simple tasks that reminded me my body could create something good. Cormac took me fishing, like when I was a kid. We sat on the dock in silence, and he didn't demand a conversation. Sometimes I talked anyway, about threats, about shame, about how I hid bruises. He listened without judgment. One day, he whispered he should have known. I told him I'd become an expert at hiding. We both cried, then we sat there until the sun went down. Those hours didn't fix me, but they reminded me I still belonged in my own life. Belonging is medicine, and it isn't loud. It's someone setting a plate in front of you and not asking you to perform gratitude. It's a father offering quiet company and letting that be enough. After being controlled, enough is revolutionary.
When trial came, what did it cost you to testify, and what held you steady while you told the story in a room designed to challenge your reality?
Testifying felt like walking back into every room I'd escaped. Thatcher stared at me dead-eyed, like my fear belonged to him. His attorney asked why I stayed if it was so bad, turning survival into blame. The prosecutor didn't let it stand. She brought medical records, police reports, photos, messages, voicemails, an escalation pattern you couldn't explain away. Karis testified about bruises, neighbors described fights, officers confirmed calls. I stayed steady by telling the truth in order without shrinking. Each sentence felt like reclaiming air. The prosecutor asked me to show scars, the rib that healed wrong, the cut on my forehead. The courtroom went quiet in the way a room does when it can't pretend anymore. I wasn't performing strength. I was choosing accuracy, and accuracy held me up. Dr. Celine Marwood had rehearsed grounding with me, feet on floor, breath counted, eyes on the present. I used those tools like a spine. When it was over, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt emptied and strangely clean, like poison had finally been named.
The verdict. What did it feel like in your body as it happened? And what changed inside you when the court finally named him correctly?
The jury deliberated for hours that felt like a lifetime. When they returned, guilty on all counts, the sound in the courtroom shifted like pressure releasing. My mom sobbed. Bramwell squeezed my shoulder. Hollis exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. Karis's hand found mine and stayed there. Thatcher didn't cry or rage. He sat expressionless, already rewriting it into a story where he was still the center. The judge sentenced him to 8 years and issued a permanent restraining order. As he was led away, he looked back once. I met his eyes and realized something startling. I wasn't scared anymore. Fear had finally moved out of my body. The courtroom was chaos, his mother wailing, my family hugging, yet my calm held like a new muscle. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a person whose reality had finally been validated in public. The difference matters. Private truth can be suffocating. Public truth creates space to breathe. On the drive home, I watched trees pass and realized my shoulders weren't up by my ears. That was new.
After court, what did new life actually look like? Not as an inspirational headline, but as routines you built on purpose. What did you choose to do next?
Ordinary on purpose. I took a job at Thornwillow Springs Public Library because quiet felt like medicine. Margot Dunsmore, the director, didn't pry. She handed me returns, brought tea, treated my competence as normal. It mattered to be seen as a whole person, not a headline. I learned neighbors' names, waved at familiar faces, rebuilt routines, morning walks with Bronte, evening dishes with my mom, therapy twice a week. I still startled at sudden sounds, but panic didn't last as long. Some days I could shelve books and forget briefly that my past existed. Those minutes were proof my brain could relearn peace. I gained back weight, slept through most nights, started smiling without checking who might be watching. Ordinary became my rebellion. Not because I was pretending nothing happened, but because I was refusing to let what happened dictate every minute afterward. I kept rebuilding the simplest things: my calendar, my appetite, my friendships, my sense of time. Trauma steals time by making every hour about survival. Routine gave time back.
Alaric entered your world. What told you it was safe to say yes, even a little? What did he do differently that your body recognized before your heart could trust it?
He was consistent, and he didn't push. Alaric Wexford came into the library every week, an architect working remotely, craving a change of scenery. He checked out books at my desk and lingered to chat without turning it into a test. When he asked me for coffee, he accepted my hesitation like it was normal. I told him about Thatcher early because secrets felt like cages now. Alaric didn't treat me like a fragile project or a woman he could save. He asked what I needed, then listened. On dates, he walked me to my car and expected nothing. When I said I wanted to go slow, he didn't negotiate. He said, okay, like consent wasn't a compliment I had to earn. Safety isn't fireworks, it's steadiness. It's someone whose mood doesn't punish you for being human. My nervous system noticed first. I stopped rehearsing explanations. I stopped checking my phone to manage his reaction. I started breathing during conversations instead of bracing. That's how I knew. My body stopped treating love like incoming weather.
Even with him in prison, what fears stayed? And how did you respond in a way that rebuilt agency without letting fear become the thing that ran your life?
Safety didn't erase waiting. Even locked up, part of me listened for the other shoe. Dr. Celine Marwood called it hypervigilance. My body rehearsing danger because danger used to arrive. Anytime. Cormac installed a gun safe in my room and taught me how to clean and maintain my own pistol. Bramwell and Hollis took me to the range twice a month, not to feed paranoia, but to rebuild agency. I wasn't looking for confrontation. I needed to stop feeling helpless. When my hands learned a skill, my mind followed. I learned boundaries in smaller ways too, locking my phone, saying no without apologizing, leaving rooms that felt tense. Prepared didn't mean obsessed. It meant I got to choose my next move, and choice is the opposite of abuse. We also focused on de-escalation and documentation, cameras, routines, check-ins, because power isn't only physical, it's having options. Some nights I still checked windows, but I didn't do it in a panic spiral. I did it like locking a door, a practical action, then back to living.
You received a letter from him. What did it say? And what did you recognize in it that made you burn it instead of treating it like closure?
The envelope arrived like a hand reaching through bars. Thatcher wrote about anger management and therapy. claiming he finally understood the damage. He said he didn't deserve forgiveness, then asked me to write back once so he'd know I'd read it. The request sounded polite, but it carried the old hook. Make me responsible for his feelings. I could hear the familiar logic underneath. If I didn't respond, I'd be cruel. If I did, I'd reopen the door. My pulse spiked just holding the paper. Dr. Celine Marwood asked what I wanted, not what he wanted. That question was a compass. So I took the letter outside and burned it. I watched the apology curl into ash and felt my shoulders drop for the first time in days. Some people don't get redemption arcs from the person they harmed. I don't owe him closure. I owe myself distance. Burning it wasn't about drama, it was about refusing contact disguised as contrition. I'd learned that words can be a leash. I didn't pick it up again.
What did therapy teach you about PTSD in a way that actually made your symptoms make sense? And what tools worked when flashbacks hit, practical things you could do in the moment?
Dr. Celine Marwood taught me trauma is memory stored in the body. My brain learned danger as default, so footsteps or a slammed door could yank me backward. That wasn't weakness, it was conditioning. We practiced grounding, 5 things I could see, 4 I could touch, 3 I could hear, 2 I could smell, 1 I could taste. It sounded simple. It pulled me into the present. We built scripts for spirals. I am safe now. This feeling is a flashback. I can choose what happens next. We made practical plans, exit routes in public, a code word with Karis, limits on news and court updates. Healing wasn't linear. Some weeks I felt strong, others raw. The tools didn't erase pain, but they gave me grips, something to hold when my mind tried to drown me in yesterday. I also learned to track triggers like weather reports, not moral failures, hunger, fatigue, anniversaries. If I could name it, I could respond instead of react. That was new power, and it came from repetition, not inspiration. Therapy didn't give me a new personality, it gave me a manual for my nervous system.
Did it feel like to sit with someone living your old reality without collapsing into it, without trying to fix it too fast? What did you learn about yourself there?
It felt like looking into a mirror that finally shows hope. I volunteered at the domestic violence shelter, phones, donations, tea. Then a woman named Anwin Calder arrived with 2 kids, and that stunned silence I remember too well. I sat with her and didn't rush her story. I told her leaving is brave even when your body feels numb. She asked how I could be so sure. I showed her a faded scar and said, "I've been where you are." Her eyes changed, still terrified, but less alone. The coordinator asked if I'd train as a peer counselor. I haven't decided. Part of me fears living inside these stories, like opening a door to an old room. Another part knows if my survival can become a lantern for someone else, it matters. It turns pain into purpose without romanticizing it. Volunteering also showed me how control looks the same in different houses. The isolation, the apologies, the shame. Seeing the pattern from the outside made my own story feel less like personal failure and more like something that happened to me and something I escaped.
How did your relationship with Leora and the girls change once everything was out in the open? What did honesty make possible that secrecy had blocked for years?
Leora stopped tiptoeing around me. At first, she flooded me with apologies. Sorry she didn't see it. Sorry she didn't push harder. I told her guilt doesn't rebuild anything, presence does. Now she brings Isolde and Clementine for weekends, and the house fills with noise that isn't fear. They ask blunt kid questions, accept my calm answers, then sprint outside like the world is still simple. Watching them reminds me why I left. I wanted them to grow up knowing boundaries are normal. Leora and I talk honestly now. She tells me when she's worried. I tell her when I'm triggered. We don't hide discomfort. We name it, then we keep living. Healing in a family looks like less secrecy, more truth, and a willingness to be awkward without running away. The girls also made me practice gentleness with myself. They don't see me as damaged. They see me as Aunt Waverly, who reads books and walks Bronte and makes pancakes. Being seen that way helped me remember I'm more than the worst thing that happened to me. It sounds small, but it rebuilt identity.
Beyond family and therapy, how did you rebuild community after isolation? What did it take to trust people in groups again without needing to explain your entire history to earn a seat?
I needed people who didn't require a full explanation. I started going to church again, not from perfect faith, but because community can be shelter. The pastor knew my story and didn't preach at me. He listened, then suggested a Tuesday support circle. I sat with other women, all survivors, and heard my fear echoed in different voices. One woman, Delphine Rusk, said, "The fear doesn't vanish, it gets quieter." That stayed with me. In that room, I wasn't the girl with the restraining order. I was a person learning to breathe. We traded practical tips, locks, code words, paperwork, and something softer, permission to believe life could be normal again. Community didn't erase my past, it widened my future, and that widening felt like oxygen. I learned trust doesn't mean telling everything at once. Trust can be built in layers, showing up, listening, letting people be kind without flinching. After isolation, even small talk felt like risk because small talk assumes safety. Those women taught me you can start with, "How was your week?" and let the deeper truths arrive when your body can hold them.
Karis stayed close through all of it. How did her loyalty change your recovery, and what did it mean to watch her build a life of her own alongside yours?
Karis moved to Thornwillow Springs and pretended it was about small town charm. I knew it was about proximity. She took a job teaching second grade and built a life that fit her: busy, loud, full of purpose. Having her close meant I didn't need full sentences. She could read fear in my face. She started dating Thayer Crownhill, and the first time she brought him to Sunday dinner, my family interrogated him like he was applying for clearance. Thayer handled it with humor, thanked my mom for food, treated my dad with respect. Later, Karis asked if her happiness would hurt me. I told her it gave me hope. Seeing her choose healthy love reminded me love can be gentle and ordinary. Ordinary is what I want now, without punishment, without tests, without fear as the entry fee. Her loyalty also kept me honest. When I minimized or tried to take blame, she didn't argue. She simply repeated the facts back to me. She became a mirror that didn't distort. And that kind of friendship is rare, the kind that won't let you disappear to keep someone else comfortable.
As life began to normalize, what milestones proved you were moving forward, not just coping, but actually expanding again? What moments surprised you with how big they felt?
Joy returned in tiny moments. I went to a bar with Karis and played pool. First time back in a place like that since I left. A guy offered to buy me a drink. I said no, and he simply nodded and walked away. No anger, no punishment. That tiny moment felt enormous. Hollis got engaged to his longtime partner, Evadine Colburn, and she asked me to stand with her at the wedding. Dress shopping was normal girl stuff: mirrors, laughter, lace debates. That reminded me I still belonged in Celebration. I'd started journaling again, not to publish, just to empty my head. Some pages were ugly, some hopeful. The point wasn't pretty, the point was motion. Milestones didn't fix me, but they proved my life was expanding, and expansion is the opposite of what Thatcher wanted. I also noticed progress in my body: fewer stomach drops, and sudden noises, less scanning in parking lots, more appetite in the morning. Those changes weren't dramatic, but they were real. Trauma teaches you to measure time in threats. Healing taught me to measure time in moments I didn't think about him at all.
Planning your own apartment? What did independence feel like after being watched for so long? What parts felt like freedom and what parts triggered panic you didn't expect?
Terrifying and thrilling. Dr. Celine Marwood said it was progress I could imagine independence without collapsing. I found a one-bedroom apartment above a bookstore, stories below, quiet above, a place designed for my kind of calm. My family turned it into a group project. Bramwell built a bookshelf like he was constructing a wall against my past. My mom bought dishes and linens, insisting I deserved nice things without earning them through suffering. Hollis installed a security system and walked me through every setting. Alaric offered to help me move and asked what pace felt safe. I said, slow. He said, okay. Packing boxes scared me, but it also made me proud. Each box was a vote for a future Thatcher couldn't touch. Independence felt like standing at the edge of a pool after almost drowning. Water means possibility, but your body remembers. Some nights in the new place, silence sounded too open. I'd catch myself waiting for footsteps. Then I'd remember, these footsteps are mine. I can lock the door because I want to, not because I'm afraid. That distinction matters.
When you think about justice now, what feels satisfying and what still feels unfinished? What's the difference between a legal ending and an emotional ending for you?
Justice is rarely poetic. Thatcher's appeal was denied, and his sentence stands 8 years, possibly less with good behavior. Part of me wished it were longer, wished the world could guarantee he'd never return. But guarantees are fantasies. Safety is practice. The permanent restraining order helps, and knowing a violation would send him back matters. What feels satisfying is the truth documented: medical records, police reports, the knife and restraints in that rental car, the verdict on the record. What feels unfinished is the part of me that still checks windows at night. Dr. Celine Marwood says that's normal. My nervous system learned danger. I'm learning to accept adequate without begging for perfect closure. My goal isn't revenge, it's peace, and peace takes maintenance, routines, boundaries, community, and refusing to reopen doors that tried to kill you. I also learned justice isn't only punishment, it's recognition. For years, he tried to make me feel like I was imagining things. The court named what he did. That naming didn't erase the past, but it stopped the past from arguing with me every day. Now my work is quieter, teaching my body that the war is over, even when memory wants to keep fighting.
If you could speak to the version of you still trapped inside that relationship, what would you tell her in plain language without making it a speech? What truth would you want to land in her body?
I'd tell her the fear isn't proof she's weak, it's proof her instincts are still alive. Love doesn't demand access, doesn't track your phone, doesn't punish your no. You don't have to earn safety by being smaller. The day Thatcher came to our porch, my family held the line and my silence finally broke. Court didn't give me a perfect ending, but it gave me time, and time gave me choices. I learned to sleep, to laugh, to set boundaries without explaining them. I still have hard days, but they don't own me. If she thinks leaving will destroy everything, I'd tell her the truth. Staying is what destroys you. Leaving is the first step back to yourself, and the first step to protecting everyone you love from someone who confuses obsession with devotion. I'd also tell her, start with one honest sentence to one safe person. You don't have to solve the whole future in a night. You just have to stop agreeing that your life is negotiable. The first no you protect becomes the beginning of your freedom.
Waverly, thank you for trusting us with your story and for telling it with the kind of honesty that can save lives. If something in this episode felt familiar, take that feeling seriously. You don't have to wait for a breaking point to deserve support. If you can, tell one safe person, start documenting what's happening, and consider speaking with a professional who understands coercive control. If you're in immediate danger, contact local emergency services. If you found this story helpful, please support Broken Relationship Tales. Like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need it. Your support keeps these stories visible and keeps survivors less alone.